The show is set in a dystopian world where a mysterious phenomenon has caused dead people to suddenly reanimate as zombies. They crawl from their graves and start hunting down normal humans for their brains and flesh. The episode opens up in a supermarket in the city of Rorton, where a woman named Lisa Lancaster is scavenging alone. She is a member of the Human Volunteer Force, or the HVF. Doesn't really roll off the tongue. A group dedicated to saving humans from zombies. Right then, she hears a noise and turns around, only to notice a zombie-like girl devouring a man's flesh. The sight terrifies Lisa, and she tries to run, but ends up tripping over another body. The bullets in her gun also run out, and to make the situation worse, all the lights inside the store go off at the same time. As Lisa struggles to find her way out, she unknowingly appears in front of another zombie, Kieran Walker, and meets her doom. Following this, the show fast-forwards by a decade, where the world has returned to normalcy. The zombie epidemic has been contained by the armed militia, and the once infected people are being treated at the Partially Deceased Syndrome, or PDS, treatment center. That one rolls off a little nicer. Kieran is also among these patients, and he still has flashbacks of the time when he used to kill people.
Doc, I'm pretty sure I ate a guy's dick once.
However, the doctor reassures him that the flashbacks are a positive indicator, and they show that his damaged brain's cognitive circuitry is being restored. He then informs Kieran to be prepared to meet his family. The latter is hesitant, as he believes that he is not ready to leave the facility yet, but the doctor assures him that the medications will help him adjust to his new life. When Kieran walks out, we can see a long queue of people suffering from PDS, waiting for their turn for the checkup. On the other hand, in the city of Rorton, Kieran's parents Steve and Sue are trying to sell their property, probably to get away from the anti-PDS local residents. Unfortunately, the customers refuse to buy the house, stating that they wish to go somewhere more isolated. After the customers leave, Kieran's younger sister Jem, a member of the HVF, leaves the house after declining to accompany her parents to pick up Kieran from the PDS facility. It seems like she hates her brother for the fact that he killed people to fulfill himself during the zombie state. At the PDS treatment center, together with his roommates, Kieran attempts group therapy. He expresses his crippling guilt for killing Lisa, but one of the guys cuts him off and advises him not to feel bad about it, since they had to kill to feed themselves. He also mentions that they had no control over their minds at the time.
Look man, we all ate dicks.
In the following scene, Jem arrives at a bar where she is welcomed by Bill Macy, a commander in the HVF. Some more members also arrive for their weekly meeting. Following this, Bill provides them with patrol walkie-talkies and explains that they will have to kill the rotters, aka zombies, even if they are on medication. On the day Kieran is supposed to be picked up by his family, he wakes up from a horrible dream in the morning. Just then, a guy walks into the room and informs him that it's time to leave. Outside, his parents arrive to pick him up, and they are soon escorted toward his room. As the family finally reunites, they shed tears of joy. Steve comments that despite everything that has happened, they are ready to move on from it. On the way back home, Kieran inquires about a graffiti, "God bless the HVF," but he doesn't get an answer. Later, the family arrives home and hurries inside to avoid any unwanted attention. Unfortunately, an elderly woman from across the road spots them through the curtains.
"It's that zombie boy."
In the next scene, a town council member, Shirley, stops by the Walker residence and informs Sue that she is well aware of Kieran returning home. She reveals that she works for the PDS treatment facility and teaches them how to inject the same medication that Kieran requires every day. Without it, he might revert to his untreated condition. Shirley then hands Sue a taser, suggesting that she use it on Kieran if he ever becomes violent, especially if she values Steve's dick. Later that evening, Kieran is confronted by his sister Jem, who angrily asks if he is a demon. She doesn't want to accept him as a brother because of all the atrocities he committed. In reply, Kieran says that after his best friend Rick passed away, he became lost. The depression eventually took his life, which continued even when he turned into a zombie. Later at night, Bill is informed by one of his men that there is a rotter hiding in the city. Furious, he grabs his gun and heads out to kill the suspected zombie. Meanwhile, Jem overhears everything through the walkie-talkie and suspects that they are talking about her brother. So she immediately rushes home and informs her parents that Bill is coming for Kieran. Following this, the Walker family arms themselves with weapons and hides Kieran. After a while, Bill and the other HVF members arrive in front of their house, but instead of barging into the Walker residence, they pull out the elderly woman who had spotted Kieran earlier. She is also revealed to be a PDS patient who is still showing symptoms of the zombie virus. Her husband begs Bill to leave her alone, but the evil commander executes the poor woman in front of everyone. Next, Bill returns home and finds his wife crying. When he inquires about what happened, she reveals that their son Rick, who had been killed in Afghanistan, has been found. The news elates Bill, but when his wife reveals that Rick will return home as a PDS patient, his expression changes. The following morning, Kieran wakes up and stares at a picture of Rick pasted on the room's wall. He then puts on some skin color makeup and his contact lenses before going downstairs to his parents. On his way, he enters Jem's room and thanks her for saving him the previous night, but she simply asks him to go away before slamming the door. Later, as the family is conversing in the kitchen, Jem arrives and brings up the ceremony that she is about to attend with her mother. Curious, Kieran asks about it, and despite the parents trying to change the topic, Jem reveals that the ceremony is about honoring the people who lost their lives during the Rising. In other words, honoring the people who got killed by zombies like Kieran during their untreated stage. Shortly after, Jem and Sue leave to attend the ceremony, and at the same time, Steve gets a call from his boss, asking him to arrive at work urgently. Shortly after he drives away, Kieran puts on a hoodie and walks out of the house, straight to the restricted cemetery. There, while looking at his tombstone, he gets a vision of himself coming out of the graveyard. Just then, Kieran notices a girl in the distance, but before he can hide, she manages to spot him. She is none other than the same girl who attacked Lisa in the department store. She introduces herself as Amy Dyer and suggests Kieran forget his past and enjoy his life. The latter tries to say goodbye and leave, but Amy holds his hand and takes him to a fun park. Slowly, they become comfortable with one another and start playing different games. Unfortunately, a guy recognizes Kieran there as a rotter and starts chasing him away. Soon, other people also join in, making Kieran afraid and compelling him to run away alone. Luckily, he arrives back home right before his family can find out that he went outside, like a regular Ferris Bueller. Later at night, when the Walker family is having dinner, Amy arrives at their door and calls for Kieran. He welcomes her inside, but when she starts talking nonsense with his parents, he escorts her to his room. Meanwhile, Jem goes to join her HVF team for night patrolling, but one of her colleagues, Dean, denies her entry. He reveals that Bill saw Kieran at her house the other day. Enraged, Jem slams the door of the vehicle and returns home. Jem is good at slamming doors. On the other hand, Rick finally arrives home with his parents and other people waiting for him. He greets them kindly and hugs his mom before heading straight to his room. Later, Bill takes Rick to the local pub and tries to convince the HVF members that his son is totally fine. The boy also starts sharing his military stories and battle encounters, impressing everyone. Meanwhile, Kieran walks out of the house with Amy and heads toward the pub to meet Rick. Turns out that Jem told him everything about Rick and his return to the town. In the next scene, when the two best friends finally meet, Rick is taken aback and he simply keeps shaking hands. Later, while everyone is busy chatting, Dean rushes into the pub and informs everyone that he noticed rotters roaming freely in the forest and that they nearly attacked him. As soon as the HVF soldiers hear this, they grab their weapons and head towards the forest. Bill asks Rick to join him, and the latter agrees. However, he also persuades his father to let Kieran come with them. Shortly after, the group arrives at the forest and begins searching for the rotters, while Kieran and Rick remain in the car. Right then, Kieran hears some strange noises and follows them until he reaches a nearby cave. There, he notices two zombies, an adult and a little girl, feeding on a dead sheep. Soon, Rick also arrives there and informs his father about the location. After a bit of a struggle, the group manages to get hold of the two zombies, but not before Dean gets bitten by the adult one. As everyone holds their breath in horror, Kieran explains that PDS is not contagious, and so he prevents Dean from committing the unthinkable. Following this, Bill orders his son to shoot the zombies and kill them immediately. However, Kieran doesn't like the idea, so he stands in front of the rifle, stopping Rick from shooting. He even takes out his contact lenses and tells the group that they need to shoot him before shooting the other two zombies. Hearing this, Rick finally lowers his weapon, but he, along with his angry dad, return home without Kieran, leaving him to wander alone in the forest. The following day, Sue and Steve are waiting for their son to arrive home as he was gone for the whole night. Meanwhile, Kieran walks inside the same superstore in which he killed Lisa at the start of the show. After staring at the exact place he murdered her, he gets a vision of exactly what happened that day. To his surprise, he sees Jem arriving at the store, holding a gun in her hand. She notices Kieran feeding on the now dead Lisa, but cannot pull herself together to shoot him. She was put on this planet to slam doors, not to cap asses. Back to the present, Kieran returns home, and without disturbing his parents, goes straight to his sister's room. He then wakes Jem up and asks her why she didn't pull the trigger on him at the superstore. Jem replies that she didn't have the courage to shoot her own brother, so she she simply ran away from there. She also mentions that she lied to everyone, telling them that her bullets ran out before she could shoot the zombies. After hearing his sister out, Kieran decides to visit Lisa's parents and tell them the truth to bring them some closure. Jem thinks it's a good idea, so she also decides to join him. After a while, the two arrive at Lisa's house to talk to her parents. The poor couple still believes that their daughter is missing and that she will soon return home. Upset, Kieran honestly tells them that he was the one who bit Lisa and killed her. He mentions that his body wasn't in control when he did it, and that he feels very guilty about it to this day. However, the grief-stricken parents refuse to believe it. They have been living all these years hopeful that their daughter will return one day and bring happiness back into their lives. Jem becomes emotional hearing this, so she stops her brother from disclosing anything more. Elsewhere, Bill expresses his anger on Rick for not killing the zombies. As a punishment, he asks the boy to finish Kieran off, stating that he is a monster and a threat to the community. Unable to deny his father, Rick agrees to get the job done. Soon, he sneaks out of the house and approaches a telephone booth. He dials Kieran's house number, but no one picks up. So, Rick leaves a voice message, informing Kieran to hide because he and his father are coming to his house to kill him. Meanwhile, as Jem and Kieran are returning from Lisa's house, they notice Amy at the train station waiting for a train to arrive. Kieran quickly goes up to her and inquires if she's going on a day trip without him. Amy replies that there is nothing for them in the city, and so she wants to go away and live a free life. She then hugs Kieran and promises to visit him someday before leaving. Ugh, says Kieran. I've eaten dicks, but I've never teased them. On the other hand, Bill is teaching his son how to attack zombies and kill them efficiently. After the training, Rick enters the bathroom and removes his makeup and contact lenses, revealing to his father that he is also a PDS sufferer who was once a zombie. To his surprise, Bill hugs him and asks him to let go of everything that is troubling him. In the following scene, Jem arrives home and picks up the phone receiver to check for messages. When she hears Rick's message,
I'm coming to kill you, boy. Hoorah! You best hide that zombie-ass boy.
she immediately rushes out of the house in search of her brother. The scene then switches to Kieran, who is standing alone at a bridge when Bill drives past him in his car. However, he does not pay much attention to Bill and returns home. Unfortunately, when Kieran arrives outside his house, he notices the dead body of Rick leaning against their garage. Devastated, he cries for a while and heads straight to Bill's house, despite Jem trying to stop him. At Bill's house, his wife Janet arrives after a long day at work and inquires about Rick's whereabouts. Surprisingly, Bill says that he hasn't seen Rick for 5 years. At the same time, a depressed-looking Kieran barges inside the house and confronts Bill for killing his own son. Hearing this, Janet picks up a knife and attacks Bill, slashing his hands. After seeing the blood in his hands and his own wife ready to kill him, Bill realizes what he has done and becomes ashamed of himself. However, as soon as he steps out of the house, he is shot by Burton, the same guy whose wife he had brutally killed earlier. All's Bill that ends Bill. In the next scene, Kieran walks out of Bill's house and finds him in the same condition as before, all alone, without Rick. Instead of going home, he goes to the forest, to the same cave, where he and Rick used to meet secretly. To his surprise, Sue arrives there searching for him. She asks him to return home and finally persuades him by sharing one of her tragic stories. Sometime later, the two arrive home and the family reunites. Steve, desperately trying his best to hold in his emotions, starts crying like a baby. In the last scene, Kieran attends Rick's funeral and watches him being buried. This time, he is not treated as a rotter, but as a normal human. His father Bill is also buried right next to him. The episode ends with Kieran returning home with his family.